welcome back to my channel. Now, I divided this video into three categories. The first being general, the second being illustrated books, and the last being classics. So if you're interested in a particular type of books for the cottagecore fantasy, then you can jump right there. Otherwise, let's dive right in. So I spread my net far and wide to get some amazing books. Some I've read, well, most I've read, some I have not read, but I have it on my TBR. But I have heard great things about these books. And when there's this time when you suddenly just want to read something very spring, summery, cottage vibes, small town with lots of open fields and flowers and birds and fairies, who wouldn't? So this is particularly targeted to that kind of genre, and we will start off with general. So the first book that I have is Bird Cottage. Now this book is brilliant in the aspect of it captures the beautiful England countryside. We follow Len Howard, who leaves her job and moves to the English countryside near Sussex to follow and understand birds. So what we have in this book is a beautiful cottage in the middle of the fields with a lot of free birds. And I think that this is a little bit of an excerpt from her own personal life, which I think adds a beautiful touch to the book. So if there's anything that is so cottagecore, then this book is it. The next book that I have on this list is Sinister Spring. So this is Agatha Christie's beautiful collection of short stories that take place primarily when the flower blooms in spring and summer. And we have in these short stories Hercule Poirot, we've got Miss Marple, all of the key detectives from the Agatha Christie books resolving all of these murders from a beautiful countryside location. So if you're into a little bit of murder mystery whodunits, but at the same time want to enjoy the cottagecore vibe, then I would highly recommend this book. Plus, look at the cover. I mean, if that doesn't spell cottagecore, what does? The next book that I have on the list is Flower Heart. Now this is another gorgeous book, except that this has a little bit of magic and poisonous witchy vibes tagged to it. But I'd recommend this sometime from spring, summer to the start of October, because this has not only a beautiful countryside and those olden era vibes, but also a lot of magic. So we have here in this story a girl who actually has poison when she touches a person, and she ends up touching her father, thereby spilling poison into his heart. And the only way to save her dad is if she performs a huge spell. And through the course of the story, we come to understand what she has to give in return and what is the cost of actually performing that big spell. So it's a beautiful story laid out with a beautiful plot and with a lot of cottagecore vibes in it. So that's also a definite recommendation. The next book I have on my list is by Ash, Oak and Thorn. This is a beautiful book which follows woodland creatures across the forest with beautifully spring and bushy and green vibes everywhere. So if you just listen to this excerpt, it says, three tiny ancient beings, Moss, Burnet and Cumulus, once revered as gardens of the wild world, wake from winter hibernation in their beloved ash tree home. When it is destroyed, they set off on an adventure to find more of their kind, a journey that takes them first into the deep countryside and then the heart of a city. Helped along the way by birds and animals, the trio search for a way to survive and thrive in a precious yet disappearing world. It's a beautiful story that follows amazing journeys with these woodland creatures, and it keeps giving you that sense of happiness and satisfaction as you go through this book. The next book that I would like to recommend highly is Daisies for Innocence. And this is a beautiful garden mystery thriller. So we follow the main protagonist, who is the owner of a perfume shop. So she creates these perfumes and she sells them, but in the midst of all of this, there is a murder. So she has to sniff that murder out in between this beautiful shop that she has set up on in the countryside. It's a gorgeous book and perfectly beautiful to read this book with a cup of tea. So I would highly recommend this book as well. The next book I'd like to recommend is All the Ever Afters. Now this is a retelling of Cinderella, but from the stepmother's point of view. So what we follow in this story is the stepmother's growth from the time she was really small to how she ends up becoming Cinderella's stepmother. And so her life takes place in the countryside, somewhere far away from the city, and she lives a perfect cottage life, of course with all of her struggles. But the only thing that I would like to add about this book is, although it is extremely beautiful, it's a retelling, it has perfect cottagecore vibes, and you get to see the world from the stepmother's point of view, I kind of felt at the end of the story that I ended up being empathetic about the stepmother, and honestly I didn't like Cinderella that much, at least from this retelling. But it's a great book, it's a beautiful twist to the story, so I'd highly recommend this as well. The next book I've got is A Curse Dark as Gold. Again, this is a retelling, but this is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, but from the point of view of the girl who spins the golden, who weaves the golden thread. In this story, we have a beautiful setting that takes place in a castle, and then we still have like a cottagey vibes and a little bit of magic because of the beautiful fairy tale retelling. So if I just read this part, it says, in promises Charlotte Miller a way out of debt, a chance to save her family's beloved woolen mill. It promises a future for her sister, livelihood for her townsfolk, security against her sinuous and grasping uncle. It might even promise that she didn't know what she needed, lasting hope and true love. But at what cost? To get the thread, Charlotte must strike a bargain with its maker, the mysterious Jack Spinner. But the gleam of gold conjures a shadowy past, secrets and bonds ensnaring generations of millers. And Charlotte's mill, her family, her friends, her love, what do those matter to a powerful stranger who can spin straw into gold? So this is again a beautiful novel, and if you enjoy retellings and you want a touch of castle vibes in your cottagecore reads, then I would recommend this book as well. Okay, we are now going to move on to illustrated books, and I have some gorgeous books with me to go through, and I should say you're going to get blown out of your mind. So I'm going to start off with the oh so beautiful, the classic tales of Beatrix Potter. And if you look at this book, it screams cottagecore. This is, we have a lot of stories here that starts with the tale of Peter Rabbit. You also get this as individual copies of each of these little woodland creatures and their stories. I have with me the treasury, so it comes with all of their stories. And they have like these really gorgeous illustrations that, oh my god, it's, even if you don't want to read the book, you can just sit and look at these beautiful pictures and it will just feel so ecstatic. It's a gorgeous book. And see, we've got like babbling brooks, and we've got beautiful little creatures that talk to little kids. I'm saying you have to have this in your collection if you are a cottagecore fan. Next, I've got with me The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Now, Winnie the Pooh is like a very famous Disney bear, but what I love about Winnie the Pooh is not just Christopher Robin, but also these gorgeous illustrations that come with where Pooh resides. So obviously we get to meet all of Pooh's friends and Christopher Robin, but we also have these beautiful illustrations of collecting honey, of the rabbit's house, of it's just beautiful and goofy and silly. And I mean, look at this. What is? The next book I would highly, highly recommend is The Complete Bramley Hedge. Now, Bramley Hedge actually has like separate stories for each season, and I would recommend the spring story for the Cottagecore soul. You also have like a summer story, an autumn story, a winter story, and then some additional stories that tell the story of each of these woodland creatures. Now, if you look at spring story, you will follow these woodland creatures as they live through spring. So what they do during spring, they'll have their habitat inside a woodland tree, and then all of these, oh gosh, these illustrations, I mean, I don't know, they're just so pretty and so like gorgeous. And this is a picture of our Mrs. Krusty Bread and Wilfred baking cakes and cookies during spring in a cottage, and oh, the smell of baking. So yes, I would highly recommend The Complete Bramley Hedge. If you do not have or do not want to try Winnie the Pooh or Beatrix Potter, don't skip out on Bramley Hedge, and you get the spring story for like much lesser. So I would highly recommend this if this is going to be your only Cottagecore book. And then I would like to recommend the Tea Dragon Society. So the Tea Dragon Society is another beautiful illustrated book that talks about the lost dragons and how our protagonist finds out about these lost tea dragons and wants to bring them back. So if you listen to this beautiful excerpt, it says, a charming all-ages book that follows the story of Greta, a blacksmith apprentice, and the people she meets as she becomes entwined in the enchanting world of tea dragons. After discovering a lost tea dragon in the marketplace, Greta learns about the dying art form of tea dragon caretaking from the kind tea shop owners. As she befriends them and their shy ward, Minette and Greta see how the craft enriches their lives and eventually their own. So it's again a beautiful story to follow and just read through during spring. The next book I'd like to recommend is Little Witch Hazel. So this is actually 4 volumes, and each volume follows our protagonist Hazel as she goes through forests and wild animals and woodland creatures and rivers to get to her destination. So this is a beautiful story that celebrates the nature and life and will give like an ode to friendship and just the beauty of nature. So I would highly recommend this book as well. We will now move on to classics. And I'm going to start off with this gorgeous beauty, which is Black Beauty. Black Beauty is a beautiful tale that we follow from the horse's point of view, which is Black Beauty, and how Black Beauty is born and is moved into a house, his first owners, and gets moved to a farm, and there he meets a beautiful girl with whom his relationship blossoms, about his running in the wild in the farm with like his hair down loose. It's a beautiful book. It's a little bit sentimental and emotional, and I love this book. It's a great addition. It is very easy to read as well. It's not that complicated like a lot of other classics. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. And of course, there's no Cottagecore recommendation without Little Women. So Little Women has to be in a Cottagecore list. Probably would have seen it in other Cottagecore lists as well, because this screams cottage. So there's nothing more cottagey than Little Women. We follow 5 sisters in a beautiful cottage and their lives, their ups and downs, their sisterly bonds, their loves, their pursuits for the future, everything. And this is a wholesome book. It is a little bit tricky with the wordings and the language because of it being a classic. It's not as easy as Black Beauty, but I would still recommend it if you can take the time to actually go through the book. And then I would like to recommend Middlemarch. Now, the copy that I have is the 150th anniversary edition, and I just love this copy. To be honest, this book is a little difficult for beginners, and I would not recommend it if you're just starting out on classics or you're just starting out on Cottagecore. It's a very fat book as well, so it probably take eons to finish. But if you are already a reader and you have read quite a bit of classics, then I would recommend Middlemarch. There is a lot to get from this book. It is cottagecore, but you will also learn a lot about life and ups and downs and failures and everything. And if you have this edition, it just is the icing on top of the cake because it's a beautiful edition. And finally, I would like to recommend my most favorite and go-to cottagecore book ever, and that is Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. And if you have not read Anne of Green Gables, now is the time to read it. Like right now, just go and get yourself this book, because you can like not get everything in this list, probably except Bramley Hedge, but you have got to get Anne of Green Gables because it is by far, without competition, even better than Little Women for me. I don't know, it is one of my favorite classics. It is not that difficult on the language. It's pretty easy to follow, a little beginnerish, but also not too complicated as well. And we follow Anne, who is a beautiful, heartful little girl who gets to go to live with this brother and sister, and she's an orphan, and she gets on the train and goes to go and live with them. And they were expecting a boy, but then they get to see, and there's been some mistake in the adoption papers. Well, not necessarily adoption, but she goes to like work in their farm, which is in Green Gables. And finally, just her story and how she fits in with the crowd and how she becomes one of them. And I don't know, maybe I'll make a separate video just talking about Anne. And Gilbert Blythe is the best book boyfriend ever. I mean, there are so many book boyfriends now, but Gilbert Blythe has like set the expectation up there. So I'm not really sure if anybody can actually go near him as yet, at least not for me. But this is a book you have to read. I will definitely probably have a separate classics chat video just to gush on and on and on and on about Green Gables. But then I am recommending this book hugely for any cottagecore enthusiast. There you go. So those were all of the books that I just recommended. I would love to hear any new books that you think could be added to this list, or any books that you have read which fit the cottagecore vibe, and probably I can check them out. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like, and I will come back with you with more recommendations on more such beautiful genres. Until then, see you.